one man saying that is fine. If that's your opinion and you're not in it, that's fine. But there is an entire market of millions and millions of people that agree that it is a store of value. So, you can think one thing, but there's also a market, and markets tend to become efficient over time.
We do know that you will always get paid in Hex on a daily basis. And that is truly the miracle that we call Hex, because it is trustless interest, trustless yield. Nothing will stop that contract from running.
Dismissed. What is up, everybody? Welcome into the Creed of Crypto live stream. I am Broke Boy Crypto. I have no one here with me tonight. It is just me. No Crypto Ewok. He is on vacay, but I had to come on. Insane news right at about quitting time, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here in the U.S. We get from Judge Auntie Carroll that we've got a full, complete 100% dismissal of the SEC lawsuit against Richard Hart, Pulse Chain, Hex, his alter egos, if you will. Much like you guys probably are, just honestly stunned right now. Like, if you've watched this channel and watched Ewok and I discuss it, and other channels too, it's not like we had totally unique opinions, but I was on record many times saying that I definitely did not think this was going to be the result. Now, I will say some of the stuff over the past week with all of these other lawsuits that are being dropped, we just saw Consensus, essentially MetaMask the other day. We saw what was the other ones? You guys in the chat can help me out. I'm just trying to collect my thoughts right now. Oh, the Coinbase one. Coinbase totally dropped. Here's the thing. So with all of these dominoes falling and all of these lawsuits they weren't dismissed, they were dropped by the SEC. That's the trend of what we've been seeing. They were all dropped by the SEC. That is not what happened here. What happened here is something much, much better. I think we're seeing in crypto, like the Trump presidency and stuff like that, we've got a reformation of the SEC. They're dropping the lawsuits that they had going, knowing that they weren't really on great ground anyway to stand on. And this is not what this was. And I think we all can agree, like, I would have taken, as a result, the SEC just dropping the suit. This is like a 10 out of 10 result. It really could not have gotten any better than this. I honestly thought that what we would get was, if anything, like a partial dismissal, like we would get, maybe just like the Hex part of it dismissed, or some of like the fraud element of it dismissed, and that other parts of it would still be going on. This is an entire dismissal from Judge Auntie Carroll. So just unbelievable. I mean, it's about a month overdue. I don't think any of us are really complaining all that much about it now, but it's been a long road. It's been a long, horrible shit road. And I think that we all need to realize, like, how great of a day this is. You're seeing it obviously in the charts. Ewok and I have had a lot of disagreements about what would happen if we did get a full dismissal. He's on record. I don't want to speak for him, but I mean, you can look back on other videos where he's like, hey, we're going to get a 10x in like a day or something. And I said, we'd probably get like a double, followed by a retracement. And I, not to throw cold water on anything, but I did just saw me tweeting about that again. And what I was always referencing was what happened with Ripple and XRP almost, a year and a half ago now, where after that dismissal, we did see a huge pump. And it wasn't a dismissal. They just won the suit. And then it did eventually come back down. Now, this is a different ecosystem entirely, different kind of cult, totally different kind of leader, one that actually likes to buy the coins instead of dump on your heads like the Solana folks do and Ripple people do. Randy and GA, yes, Ewok knows. I was the one to break the news, actually. He is vacationing right now, so that's why we didn't have a show this past week. And when I saw this news right at 5 p.m., I was like, boy, I got to fire up a stream. And I know a lot of other people are doing this right now, and Nuclear Herbs is out there. Definitely somebody to listen to. Crypto Coffee was on it. I mean, literally, I think I signed up for email notifications on Pacer for a court listener for when there's an update on this thing. And I got an email and I'm like, holy shit. And I'm, immediately going to Twitter, immediately checking prices, which of course they weren't reacting quite yet. And sure enough, I see a crypto coffee stream pop up. He hadn't even downloaded the PDF to read it yet, and had a stream ready to go. Nuclear Herbs was talking about it. I just really cannot believe all this. And I just want to say before we get into it, and I do have the 30-page memorandum from Judge Carroll here that we're not going to read over every single detail of, but I'm going to definitely go through it because I think we need to get into the meat of this a little bit. But where was I going with that? Shit, I forget what my point was. But either way, hey, we got a full dismissal. This is not the SEC just giving up on it. This is a complete dismissal here. Mike's view, yes, let's go indeed. We are pumping. We're pumping hardcore. We're seeing a little bit of a pullback, and it's so crazy. Like, I'm already seeing people who are like, who's selling? Why are we stopping here? What's going on? Like, give it a chance to react. This literally is 90 minutes old, this news, maybe a little bit over an hour and a half. We're going to see some reactions in the coming days. Ewoks always talk about, big players being sidelined that want some clarity on stuff like this, and that we should start to go up. Oh, we're getting the viewers coming now. So welcome, everybody. Got 120 people here. Hit the like to support Real DeFi, Pulse Chain, the channel. We appreciate all of you guys. Richard Hart just tweeted as well. I will read that real quick here, and I'm going to bring up, I have on a separate tab the actual the document that we will go through from Auntie Carroll. But I just cannot stress enough how bullish this is. This isn't the SEC dropping it. This isn't her, the judge, dismissing part of the case or something like that. She did leave a little bit of a window open that within 20 days, the SEC could basically refile their complaint with dressing it up with some other shit on it. But here's the thing. She decimated their arguments in this document so badly, I don't even know what they would come back with. And who would it be coming back anyway? I mean, we already have Hester Pierce basically running up whatever temporary shindig is for them. Paul Atkins, I don't know what the timetable is on him being not sworn in, but whatever the phrase is, confirmed. So we have that coming as well. It's just insane. And digital money markets, this is exactly how I feel like I'm dreaming. Yeah. I mean, the fact that it was July 31st, 2023, when this came down. I remember that day. I'm sure you guys do as well. Like, I vividly remember the news coming down. I think I actually was just going to my portfolio to check prices for the hell of it anyway. And I saw they were down. The whole ecosystem was down 40%. And I just got this pit in my stomach. And I'm like, what is going on? And got the news, went for a walk to clear out the head a little bit, and it's been a shitty year and a half after that, basically. And, look, while the SEC obviously was corrupt and had nothing here to begin with, and I think we've all always seen that, and the judge, thankfully, most importantly, saw it. It's not the only reason prices have been down. I mean, and even now, and I'll get to this, not to get to the bad news of the market right now. Not that it's bad, and I think it's going to turn around, but Ethereum's $2,200. Like, Ethereum's fucked right now. So until it starts doing something, we're probably not going to have, incredibly bullish things going on. But obviously, this is a gigantic catalyst, and we're going to see awesome price action here in the short term. Let's see here. Fubar. I feel like this was good timing too, with Bitcoin being down. Now we can hopefully all go up together. Yeah, it's crazy because Bitcoin just filled whatever that CME gap at 78K. I don't know if that'll be where it stops or if it goes lower. I think, as long as it stays above 72, 73,000 Bitcoin, that is, then we're going to be okay. Mike's view. Yeah. We may wake up in a nightmare. We all go to sleep in a dream. Yeah. I don't know what Urban Productions is talking about. Yeah. I mean, I was always bullish, but in terms of the actual ecosystem long term, but I didn't think we were going to get a full dismissal like that. So amazing stuff. Hit us up in the chat. Give me your thoughts on this, guys. Any angles that maybe you haven't heard people talk about or we haven't thought of. We saw Pulse X pretty much reach parity already with Pulse, which is just absolutely insane. So Pulse X is already pumped hardcore. I saw, I didn't actually substantiate it because I'm just reacting to everything now, but I saw somebody on Twitter talking about that the OA wallet may have been buying some Pulse X. So crazy, the moves are just being made here right now. So yeah, my mind's kind of all over the place with this. It's obviously incredibly bullish, really good stuff here. And yeah, we'll just see where we go in the days to come. Let's go over and check out, well, I was going to read Richard Hart's tweet first. So he just said, I appreciate Judge Mon's careful ruling, which has dismissed all of the SEC's claims against me. This type of victory over the SEC is quite rare, which he's totally right about. Pulse Chain, Pulse X, and Hex are non-securities and should be allowed to flourish. Hex has operated flawlessly for over 5 years. Today's decision in favor of a cryptocurrency founder and his projects over the SEC brings welcome relief and opportunity to all cryptocurrencies. Thank you, President Trump, for supporting cryptocurrency. And then he just attaches the court document. And so people have been talking about like precedent setting, like what may have happened in the lawsuit to set precedent for other crypto cases moving forward. I don't think there's really much in terms of, because this wasn't called a security, this won't be. I think the precedent, if anything, that Richard Hart's kind of talking about here is a guy who was individually attacked, that had all of his products basically called alter egos and things like that. And the case just gets outright dismissed. I mean, I think it's more so the lawfare type of stuff that we've been seeing from the SEC. Obviously, then you've got the Interpol crap, which is a totally separate thing. That's kind of just, I equate this SEC ruling has really nothing at all to do with the Interpol FUD. It's its own thing. But the Interpol thing coupled with the SEC thing is just kind of the whole, how they tried to take down Trump leading up to the election. Just when you're a successful person who's made millions and billions of dollars, and other people haven't, they tend to try to leech off you and use lawfare to bring you down, and they'll do it by any means possible. So the Interpol thing's still out there. I tend to trust Richard Hart. I mean, obviously what he has already done in terms of defeating the SEC here with his attorneys and talking about how safe he's been back when he did that Christmas video. I think he's likely in a good place. And really that Interpol thing was old news anyway. People already had read about that before. And it just, the other people that have Interpol red notices, the charges are nowhere near as, menial as what was put on that one. So I think we can all agree that that's pretty much bullshit. Ivor, let's go. I pumped up 150K in 5 minutes. Let's go. That's right. Yeah. I will say, I usually don't talk too personally about this stuff, but I put a somewhat substantial amount of money into the market a mere hours before this news today. So I'm particularly happy because of that. Yes. Digital money, Marcus. Oh, good thought. You just said the OA is free to buy or at a minimum move the ETH funds RH wanted to. I mean, look, we've been seeing moves by significant wallets already for weeks, even before this happened. I mean, we've been seeing, obviously, the ink inflation being slashed, things moving around. So that has already, there's been movement for a while. I think it's more so waiting on market conditions for some of that to really fire off, to be honest. But obviously, this certainly helps. I mean, this happening, I think there's a lot more freedom. And obviously, we're all waiting. Is he going to live stream? I mean, I think you'll all probably tune out of here right now if we get a, hey, going to go live in a minute or something here from Richard. So that would be nice. We got Alex McWhirter tweeting again, which was a pleasant surprise. So we'll see what he's talking about here. Scrubhead, let's go indeed. Yeah, and this is what I was just saying. Yeah, do you think, I mean, to me, I would think within a week or two here at minimum, just because I think that's really the only thing that's been holding him back, But the other thing is too, and we've been saying this for a long time, like it is still market conditions. Like while it would be, I want to get his full thoughts on this. Obviously, I would love to have him come out, talk as much as he can about the case, everything that's happened, and kind of give his thoughts as candidly as he can, which I imagine he can now that the case is over. But at the same time, again, ETH is $2,200. So I don't think a Magic Richard Hart live stream is going to make Pulse, do a 10x or anything like that. But it would be certainly bullish to have him here, have him be streaming again. I mean, many people, partially even myself included, in this cycle right now that we're not necessarily Hex OGs, and we're more so, I was in Hex, obviously, but then Pulse Chain comes along and all these other things. You weren't really here for like the craze that was Richard Hart in the last bull cycle, where you watch all those old interviews that he did with all these significant crypto people, whether they were trying to sling arrows at him or just really find things out about his products. I think it would be amazing to have that back again, to have him being interviewed by, I mean, look, the coin bureaus of the world are not going to do it. Many people will never talk about it because they're paid off by other entities and stuff like that on their channel and do backdoor deals and stuff. But it would just be amazing to have him out again on video, being interviewed by people. I definitely think that it is a possibility here soon. The rat just woke up to the news. Congratulations. Yeah, I mean, it was surreal. I mean, I'm still taking it in, really, like thinking of all the angles of this and what it means. I mean, again, I did not think this is what was going to happen. I thought we'd get a partial dismissal or something. I did not think we would get just a full-blown dismissal. And I want to say too, like, I wasn't at the courtroom on October 31st. I know a lot of people were, but just from reading the transcripts or like watching the AI reenactments and stuff, and obviously I'm even more happy because of this result, but Judge Carroll, I think, did a phenomenal job remaining neutral, was extremely prepared. Like, just from reading the transcripts and stuff like that, she was very well versed on this. We didn't get some, a lot of people I think were afraid, we get like an older woman who knows nothing about crypto and stuff like that. I think she was more in tune with everything than the SEC was. You read that SEC complaint, they had no idea what they were talking about. They claimed that PulseX was a token on Ethereum, accused Richard Hart of fraud, talked about the $12 million for the diamond or whatever, which I think is literally provable where that money came from. So there was just, a lot of throwing shit to the wall to see what sticks. And luckily she did her job, Judge Carroll, very well, and saw that they were really just throwing shit against the wall and that they were unprepared. And, and even though she's a judge and she's paying attention specifically to that case, you can't stay out of the news. I mean, she knows that the SEC is on losing streak after losing streak against whoever it would be, XRP and whoever else leading up to everything. So they just got a reputation for, overreach, corruption. And we got it about 30 days later than I would have thought, but we get an amazing result, a complete and utter dismissal here. So, yeah. Hit me up with some comments in the chat, guys. 326 people watching. Smash the like. Support the channel. We got another Richard Hart tweet just celebrating again, I believe. Yeah, case dismissed. Thank you, Judge Amon. And then he just, I think he posted a thread of just highlighting the motion to dismiss is granted. I mean, I remember Nuclear Herbs, and in no way I'm not dunking on him or anything. I'm just like saying, because obviously he knows way more than me. I just remember him speculating, he's like, hey, most motions to dismiss, it's like a 10% chance of being granted, but it's definitely worth doing in this case, just with the jurisdiction arguments and all these things. Richard can afford it, blah, blah, blah. He said then, particularly in this case, though, I'd give it more of a 30% chance just because of those factors. Then whenever he actually attended and saw the motion to dismiss hearing, he sounded like he was 50-50. He didn't come out and say that, but it sounded like he was at a coin toss, basically, at his odds. And here we are today, February 28th, 2025. The thing is dismissed. So it's just insane. Like, every day this week, we saw a crypto lawsuit get dropped. Very different, though. The other ones were dropped. Uniswap, whatever else, Coinbase, all that stuff. This dismissed by the judge. I mean, this is better. This is objectively better than those things. It wasn't that the SEC decided, let's turn our tails around and go home. The judge decided. So I'm going to go ahead, and bring up this doc, and we'll see what we can read. Let's see here. Okay. All right. I think you guys should be able to see this. Okay. So, yeah, here is the case introduction. Plaintiff Securities and Exchange Commission brought this action against Richard Hart and blah, 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 blah. She summarizes everything that happened. They sued him for promoting, offering, and selling unregistered asset securities and defrauding investors by misappropriating investor funds pursuant to Rules 12b-2 and some other ones of the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure. Hart, am I getting something cut off here? Oh, yeah. Yeah, I gotta zoom out a little bit. There we go. Hart moved to dismiss all claims, both for lack of personal jurisdiction and for failure to state a claim. For the reasons stated below, the motion to dismiss is granted, all caps. And that's just kind of what she puts in the beginning of the answer. Just insane. So background, the following facts are taken from the complaint and are assumed for true purposes of the motion. I draw all reasonable inferences in the SEC's favor. Hart is United States citizens residing in Finland. I'm definitely not going to go into all details on this, but so they talk about the offer periods, which I know the SEC had some issues with what was correct in this. So the HEX offer period, let's see if I can get down to a summary of this part. Pulse chain from July 15th, 2021 to August 3rd, 2021, Hart coordinated an offering to raise investor funds to allegedly develop Pulse chain. Pulse chain's a hard fork of Ethereum, blah, 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 blah. And then they also talk about Pulse X from December 29th, 2021 to February 26th, 22. Hart coordinated an offering to raise investor funds to allegedly develop Pulse X. The SEC alleges that the Pulse X offer period, like the Pulse chain offer period, was also unofficially extended to April 6th, 22. And I imagine what they were trying to say there was that people were still sending funds in, even if it was not likely to be a fantastic ROI for them, because we know from the blockchain that people were sending tokens in well past the point that they would have gotten like their full points for the tokens. She goes on to say Hart developed PulseX and its native token PulseX around the same time as Pulse Chain. And they describe what PulseX is, talking about the offering period, post-offer period statements. After the HEX offer period, Hart continued to market and promote HEX to allegedly drive HEX's demand on the secondary market. HEX's websites published statements claiming that HEX appreciated faster than anything else, which is just kind of a statement of fact and retrospect, and that HEX's primary design intention is price appreciation. Hart also directed potential investors to visit his website, ethhex.com, which allow investors to transact. Blah, 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 blah. Let's get down to here. Pulse Chain and PulseX. After the Pulse Chain and PulseX offer periods, Hart continued to market and promote Pulse Chain and PulseX. He stated at PulseCon that his developers are geniuses. They find bugs other people don't, and that before we launch, we want everything to be right. Regarding PulseX, Hart, through a Telegram chat, described how PulseX functioned to one potential U.S. investor. Hart provided the investor with step-by-step instructions. Was that Clio? I don't know. On how to purchase crypto assets and how to transfer from to Pulse Chain and swap on PulseX. Further on YouTube Live, when asked about an update on the launch of Pulse Chain and PulseX, Hart replied that it's done when it's done. Software is hard. The developers are working on it. That's all there is to it. Remember those days when we were all clamoring for Pulse Chain to get released. Pulse Chain fraud allegations. The SEC further alleges that Hart defrauded Pulse Chain investors and engaged in deceptive conduct from October 3rd of 21 through September 22nd of 22. The SEC alleges that Hart misappropriated, here's what I was talking about earlier, $12 million of Pulse Chain investor funds to purchase luxury items, including cars, watches, and diamonds. To disguise these transactions, Pulse Chain deposits were first transferred to Hart's private wallet and then transferred through a series of mixer transactions before ending up in 3 crypto asset platforms. According to the complaint, these mixer transactions ultimately benefited Hart through his personal purchases. Hart never disclosed to investors what their deposits would be, that their deposits will be used for such purchases. So, that was one of the things right there. I'll stop right there for a second. That Judge Carroll vehemently on the day of that hearing just said, like, okay, well, it's his money and he did what he wanted to with it, right? She also added in that he delivered the product, obviously, of course, too. So what are you talking about at this point? I'm checking your comments here real quick. Okay. So yeah, moving on from there. And yeah, again, kudos to Judge Carroll on that one, because she called that out big time in court. Complaints, causes of action. Based upon these allegations, the SEC asserts 2 basic claims for relief against Hart. First, it alleges that Hart violated Section 5 of the Securities Act by failing to register the offer and sale of Hart's crypto assets as required by the securities laws, which, I mean, that's kind of what they're going after all these different cryptocurrencies about, is, you know, that they're securities. Standard of review, Rule 12b2. To defeat a motion to dismiss for lack of personal jurisdiction, the plaintiff need make only a prima facie showing that jurisdiction exists. And then they describe how that works. 12b6, Federal Rule of Civil Procedure, provides for dismissal of a complaint that fails to state a claim upon which relief can be granted. To survive a dismissal, a complaint must state a claim that is plausible on its face, by alleging sufficient facts for the court to draw a reasonable inference that the defendant is liable for the misconduct alleged, and down to the personal jurisdiction. This has been the biggest one all along, because the SEC obviously tried to say, well, you know, at least one of the developers of Uniswap lives in the New York area, and at least one of the investors of HEX lived in the New York, you know, basically just to bring it in the Southern District of New York, which was preposterous and really made no sense at all. Like I've said on here many times, you could be in Billings, Montana or something too. So why wasn't it there? So for personal jurisdiction, Hart first asserts that the SEC has failed to establish personal jurisdiction as to any of its claims. To establish personal jurisdiction over a defendant due to process requires a plaintiff to allege that a defendant has certain minimum contacts within the relevant forum and that the exercise of jurisdiction is reasonable in the circumstances. For purposes of the minimum contacts analysis, the SEC only asserts that I have specific jurisdiction over Hart, meaning the judge. Specific jurisdiction exists when a court exercises personal jurisdiction over a defendant in a suit arising out of or related to the defendant's contact with the forum. In determining whether specific jurisdiction exists, courts must assess the quality and nature of the defendant's contacts with the forum state under a totality of the circumstances test, and provides other case law. The crucial question is whether the defendant has purposefully availed itself of the privilege of conducting activities within the forum state, thus invoking the benefits and protections of its laws, yada, yada, yada. I don't want to read that. I wanted to read her actual thoughts. Let's skip down here. Courts must examine the defendant's contacts with the forum at the time of the events underlying the dispute with determining whether they have jurisdiction. The SEC then must show some sort of causal relationship between Hart's U.S. contacts and the episode in suit, and the SEC's claim must in some way arise from Hart's purposeful contacts with the forum. I'm guessing that she did not believe that they did that. Because the SEC must establish this court's jurisdiction with respect to its unregistered securities claims and its pulse chain fraud claims, I address each set of claims in turn. Here we go. So she says unregistered securities claims. In support of its unregistered securities claims, the SEC relies on contacts and that occurred before, during, and after the offer periods. I will first consider Hart's contention that the SEC's alleged post-offer period contacts are not relevant to the inquiry. She says post-offer period contacts. Hart argues that his virtual attendance at the HEX conference, PulseCon, and his in-person appearance at the Miami interview are irrelevant because investors could no longer participate in the alleged offer and the sale of Hart's crypto assets. The SEC argues generally that Hart's mix of online plus in-person promotions together were specifically directed towards the United States and thus constitute sufficient minimum contacts, but fails to adequately address the timing issue raised by Hart. Here, the relevant suit-related conduct is the conduct that could have subjected Hart to liability under Sections 5A, sale of unregistered securities, and 5C, offer of unregistered securities of the Securities Act for registration violations. Contacts that post-date the offer period could not subject Hart to liability because investors could no longer purchase Hart's crypto assets pursuant to the offer. For HEX, the offer period closed in November 2020, well before the conferences took place. Although Hart did discuss HEX extensively during the HEX conference, it is irrelevant to the offer and the sale of unregistered securities because investors could no longer participate in the offer period. The complaint alleges that since the HEX offering closed, HEX investors can only purchase HEX tokens from third parties on platforms such as Uniswap. But Hart is not alleged to have any control or involvement in Uniswap, which is, of course, entirely true. And if you're just tuning in, these are Judge Carroll's statements. This is her directly in her answer into why she dismissed this whole thing. Right now, she's responding to the offer period timing. Regarding Pulse Chain and PulseX, although the HEX conference took place before the end of the unofficially extended offer period for Pulse Chain and PulseX, nothing was said of significance that related to those offerings. Hart only mentioned Pulse Chain and PulseX as having a product market fit with a lot of traction and a lot of demand. The HEX conference instead focused on HEX's post-offer performance. Without more, Hart's presence at a virtual conference focused on a different post-offering asset is insufficient to establish personal jurisdiction. The remaining alleged contacts, PulseCon and the Miami interview, took place. This Miami interview, I think, is freaking Jesus. Is that those two dudes? I would know. I don't watch them. I don't know why I can't think of that freaking show. Somebody help me in the chat. Fresh and Fit. There you go. Moreover, my interview took place after the Pulse Chain and PulseX offer periods ended. Moreover, there is no allegation that Hart received investor deposits after the HEX, Pulse Chain, and PulseX offer periods closed. Absent such allegations, Hart's suit-related conduct does not arise out of or relate to his post-offer period contacts. Okay, she says, finding no personal jurisdiction where the plaintiff has not pled facts suggesting that the defendant's conduct took place with a relevant time period. Accordingly, I find that Hart's participation in the virtual conferences and his in-person interview are not relevant contacts that could subject Hart to liability of the alleged offer and sale of Hart's crypto assets. So there you go. Like the, whatever you want to call it, interviews, campaigning, whatever it is that he did. Judge Carroll, straight from her mouth, says that it had nothing to do with, pumping up the offer period or anything. The next part is contacts before. How long is this damn thing? I just want to know what I'm getting into. Yeah, we're good. All right. All right. This is it. Yeah. Okay. There we go. All right. So contacts before and during the offer period. For relevant periods, the SEC relies on Hart's online marketing efforts through social media and his websites. Because this conduct occurred outside the United States, courts employ the effects test, which permits a court to assert specific personal jurisdiction over a defendant if the defendant expressly aimed its conduct at the forum. Incidental effects or even foreseeable effects are insufficient. Instead, the defendant must have intentionally caused, expressly aimed to cause an effect in the form through the conduct elsewhere. Okay. Hart's internet contacts. The SEC alleges that Hart extensively marketed Hart's crypto assets on his websites and social media. Can I get this to... Yeah. And promote Hart's crypto assets were globally available and not expressly directed toward the United States. For the reasons stated below, the remaining suit-related internet contacts, even considered collectively, are insufficient to establish personal jurisdiction. When determining whether to exercise personal jurisdiction over a defendant because of activity on his website, the Second Circuit considers as a relevant factor a website's interactivity in demanding whether the defendant, through the website, purposefully availed himself of the privilege of conducting activities in the forum. A website's degree of interactivity exists on a spectrum. At one end of the spectrum are active websites where a defendant clearly does business over the internet because he contracts with residents of a foreign jurisdiction through knowing and repeated internet communications. On the other end are passive websites which do not confer jurisdiction, which is what I'm guessing she decided is the case here with Hex. Passive websites generally do not give users any ability to directly purchase the services through the website. Most courts have found that maintenance of a website alone without more does not rise to the level of purposeful availment. Finally, the middle of the spectrum involves interactive websites which permit the exchange of information between users in another state and the defendant, which, depending on the level and nature of the exchange, may be a basis for jurisdiction. So, kind of a gray area there. The SEC argues that Hart conducted business over the internet through his websites and social media campaigns, but the facts as alleged fail to support that position. Judge Carroll coming through again. In making this argument, the SEC relies on my decision in SEC versus PlexCorp, but that reliance is misplaced. SEC. In PlexCorp, the SEC brought suit against defendants for violations of federal securities laws for promoting and selling their crypto asset to U.S.-based customers. I rejected the defendant's motion to dismiss for lack of personal jurisdiction because the defendants created several significant internet contacts with the United States while promoting their initial coin offering. The defendants used Facebook, this is that PlexCorp case, to directly message information about the ICO to U.S.-based customers, respond to questions, and provide links to the defendants' websites. The defendants also facilitated sales on their websites through payment portals through which users could provide their credit card information and purchase the crypto asset, in part because the defendant's website contacts events that they clearly did business over the internet. I determined that personal jurisdiction was proper. That was in the PlexCorp case, which differs from here. And she's going to say that. Here, unlike PlexCorp, Hart's website contacts were not active. The complaint fails to allege that Hart facilitated transactions, collected credit card information, or entered into contracts with U.S.-based investors through his websites. Therefore, Hart did not clearly do business over his websites. Nor do Hart's websites contact fall toward the middle of the spectrum. Also good to hear because there was gray area there. The complaint alleges that Hart provided information via YouTube and on his website on how users could invest in Hart's crypto assets. However, Hart did not directly message US-based investors and remember, the SEC is in the US. That's the other big shitty thing about this. This is an international, crypto is, you can be on Mars. You're on Mars, you got a laptop and a connection to PulseX, you're good to go. So this is just the U.S. Hart did not directly message U.S.-based investors or respond to questions through his websites. Rather, Hart disseminated how-to information, which alone is not sufficient. Hart's website contacts instead fall closer to the passive end of the Zippo spectrum. That was another case she mentioned. As alleged, Hart's websites included clickable tabs that provided information on how to purchase Hart's crypto assets, which, pretty standard. But simply posting information on an internet website, which is accessible to users in foreign jurisdictions, is not grounds for the exercise of personal jurisdiction. Let's jump down here. She's talking about other cases. Accordingly, Hart's website contacts simply provided globally available information and lacked sufficient interactivity to constitute a significant contact. Hart's social media statements fare no better. Hart claimed on YouTube that Hex was built to outperform Ethereum and Bitcoin and all other cryptocurrencies. Not doing so much right now, but knock on wood. But such statements are not alleged to be expressly targeted at the United States. And here, this is back to the jurisdiction thing. And where is he saying about for U.S. investors more than other forums? Let's hop down here. The defendant's social media statement. If your friends ask you where is the best exchange to buy, this was another case, Tron in the United States and Europe, the best answer is Kraken FX. Targeting the U.S. market. So that would be an example of targeting a U.S. market. I'm glad she said that. In sum, the relevant online communications described in the complaint during the offer period consist of untargeted, globally available information. The SEC failed to plead sufficient facts to suggest Hart's online statements were purposefully directed to the forum rather than a global audience. Yeah, and I think that was obvious to all of us. Number two, U.S.-based developers. So I talked about this at the beginning because one of their alleged things, at least one developer is, Southern District of New York, whatever. The SEC argued half-heartedly. This is the judge speaking. Just remember, as I'm reading this is Judge Carroll speaking. The SEC argues half-heartedly that Hart's involvement with Bar, a software developer to develop Hart's crypto assets, constitutes purposeful conduct directed to the United States. For the reasons discussed below, Bar's involvement with Hart's falls short of what is necessary to exercise personal jurisdiction over Hart. First, there is no allegation that Barr was in the United States while he worked with Hart. The affidavit says only that Barr currently lives in the United States. Even if Barr were in the United States SEC, he was not an employee of Hart. Instead, he was only a volunteer, and his activities were purely incidental in his presence in the forum. Further, Barr's activities are not alleged to relate to efforts to market and promote the alleged securities at issue. Because Hart did not engage in substantial suit-related conduct in or directed at the United States in connection with the offer and sale of Hart's crypto assets, I find that Hart does not have sufficient contacts with the United States for a specific jurisdiction. Since I conclude the minimum contacts are lacking, I need not determine whether exercising personal jurisdiction over Hart for the unregistered securities claims would satisfy the Fifth Amendment's reasonableness requirement. Excuse me. She moves on to the Pulse Chain fraud claims. I further find that there is no personal jurisdiction over Hart for the Pulse Chain fraud claims. And this is a big one because this is one that's unique to the other SEC crypto cases that have been out there. This is the alleging of fraud, which, of course, we all knew was probably one of the easiest ones to poke holes in. But at the same time, even though they're just alleging something, it's also kind of one of the scarier things of all. But Judge Carroll says, I further find that there is no personal jurisdiction over Hart for the Pulse Chain fraud claims as discussed above because the relevant conduct for Hart's alleged fraudulent conduct occurred entirely out of forum. The Second Circuit relies on the effects test. The SEC fails to meet the test. The SEC's allegations of Hart misuse of investor funds and material omissions all occurred abroad. Hart's alleged deceptive acts include misappropriating investor funds between August of 21 and September of 22, and using devices to conceal the funds movement. To the extent the complaint shows that Hart misappropriated investor funds through deceptive mixer transactions, those actions occurred entirely outside of the U.S. The alleged misappropriation occurred through digital wallets and crypto asset platforms, none of which were alleged to have any connection with the United States. The SEC alleges that Hart's material omissions included telling investors about Pulse Chain's development progress and that their investments supported free speech ideals while failing to disclose his luxury purposes. As an initial matter, although the timeline for the Hart's fraud the Pulse Chain fraud claim encompasses Hart's attendance at the virtual conferences and his in-person interview in Miami, the SEC does not allege that these events relate in any way to the conduct underlying its fraud claims. As discussed above, globally available internet content not expressly directed at the United States is insufficient to establish minimum contacts. SEC trying to ruin things for the rest of the world. Accordingly, a focus on the relationship of Hart, the forum, and Hart's suit-related conduct points to the conclusion that there is no specific personal jurisdiction over Hart for the Pulse Chain fraud claims in this case. She goes on, application of the United States securities laws. Even if the SEC had established personal jurisdiction over Hart, which they didn't, Judge Carroll is saying, the complaint cannot stand because it fails to adequately plead that Hart, Jesus, too many hearts in this document, that either the transactions or conduct at issue were domestic under the federal securities laws. Section 5A, sales of securities claim. It is a longstanding principle of American law that legislation of Congress, unless a contrary intent appears, is meant to apply only within the territorial jurisdiction of the United States. In another case, Morrison, a plaintiff therefore must show that transactions at issue were either listed on domestic exchanges or that purchase or sale occurred in the United States. That's not the case here. Hart's crypto assets did not trade on domestic exchanges. Thus, like Coinbase, which is based out of San Francisco, and that's another reason. I mean, this is a topic for another day, but just the whole all Pulse needs to be on exchanges and things like that. It definitely helped us a little bit in this case. I mean, this whole thing was being dismissed either way based on jurisdiction, but still. To establish the existence of a domestic securities transaction and securities not listed on a domestic exchange, a plaintiff must allege facts suggesting that irrevocable liability was incurred or title was transferred within the United States. Okay. Hart contends that the federal securities laws do not apply to the sale of Hart's crypto assets because the complaint merely alleges that an unspecified number of U.S.-based investors participated in the offerings. The SEC argues that irrevocable liability attached when U.S.-based investors deposited crypto assets in digital wallets located on the blockchain in exchange for Hart's crypto assets. In support of its position, the SEC relies on the Second Circuit's recent decision in Williams versus Binance, which addressed the extraterritorial application of securities law under Morrison to transactions in crypto assets. In Williams, the court held that the plaintiffs had plausibly alleged that their securities law claims involved domestic transactions for the purposes of Morrison. Let's hop down here. The plaintiffs alleged that while in the United States, they registered accounts with Binance, accepted Binance's terms of use, and the majority of which of their servers are in the United States. Pursuant to the terms of use, once the trades were matched, they cannot be canceled. Further, Binance disclaimed having any physical location or being subject to any country's securities regulation regime. Binance did, however, have a substantial presence with servers, employees, and customers throughout the United States. Not the case with Richard Hart, obviously. The court acknowledged that determining where irrevocable liability attaches is particularly difficult when a transaction takes place over an exchange that claims to have no physical location in any geographic jurisdiction and not to be subject to the oversight of any country's regulatory authority. Despite this difficulty, the court noted that transactions on such a digital exchange cannot occur nowhere, of course. The court determined that two transactional steps give rise to the inference that irrevocable liability occurred in the United States. That was in the Binance case. Under the first transactional step, the court found it was appropriate to determine where matching occurred solely based on the location of the servers. Binance had not registered any country, purported to have no physical or official location whatsoever, and the authorities in Malta, where nominal headquarters are located, disclaimed responsibility for trying to get to the end of this Binance thing here. I know she's setting up the final blow here, but I'm just trying to read through it. Okay, so she used the Williams Binance case to eventually say, here in the Hart case, unlike in Williams, the complaint fails to allege that investors' deposits were matched on servers in the United States. Binance is an exchange. There are servers in America. Nor does the complaint allege that the deposits were first validated on the blockchain in the United States. You can't. We don't know where it is. Thus, the complaint fails to satisfy the first transactional step under Williams. The SEC interprets Williams, however, to stand for the proposition that sending buy orders and payments from the United States is a second separate basis to establish irrevocable liability. Therefore, under the standalone basis, irrevocable liability occurred in the United States when U.S.-based investors deposited crypto assets into digital wallets on the chain. In response, Hart argues that the Second Circuit expressly observed that placing purchase orders from the United States was only a second interrelated reason to find that the irrevocable liability attached in the United States. Whether it is or is not an independent basis to show that the parties have irrevocably bound within the United States, there is insufficient allegations to apply this basis. First, the Second Circuit specifically expressed that we have reason here to consider where the trades originated because Binance expressly disclaims having any physical location, and therefore the sovereignty and committee concerns are less present. In this case, Hart made no such disclaimers. Rather, the complaint alleges that Hart is a resident of Finland. Unlike Malta's express disclaimer of regulatory responsibility over Binance, Finland is not alleged to have made any such disclaimer. Matter of fact, Finland hates him. Further, the SEC attempts to assert in conclusory fashion that the transactions took place in the United States. The investors did not enter into terms of use with Hart. Instead, the SEC relies on allegations that investors deposited crypto assets into digital wallets, including from the United States, and which is insufficient. Courts have required far more U.S.-centric allegations to show that the crypto asset transactions at issue were sufficiently domestic. She goes on. I'm not going to read this whole other case. She explains why. I acknowledge the Second Circuit's concern that transactions on a digital exchange cannot occur nowhere, but as alleged, I cannot reasonably infer that these transactions occurred in the United States. Well said. Where does the blockchain live? Famous Carol quote. Accordingly, the SEC has failed to adequately allege domestic transactions for its claims. This is outstanding. If you're just tuning in, just reading over Judge Auntie Carroll's decision to totally dismiss this. Yeah, fresh and fit. I see in the comments now. Thanks, guys. And I mean, man, she is just shutting them down. I mean, her attitude in the courtroom that day is really coming out. Not attitude, but the way her opinions seem to be is really coming out here in this document. So we're almost through this thing. Section 5C offers of securities claims. Section 5C prohibits offering a security without a registration statement. The parties disagree about what test I should apply to determine whether Hart's alleged offer of Hart's crypto assets without a registration statement was domestic. Hart argues that the relevant consideration is the location of the offerer. The SEC claims that it is what the offerers heard while in the United States that should control, and because Hart engaged in conduct, albeit abroad, that targeted U.S. investors, there is insufficient domestic conduct to apply U.S. securities laws. Courts in the district have determined that for an offer to be domestic under the Securities Act, a person or entity must attempt or offer in the United States to dispose of securities or solicit in the United States and offer to buy securities, neither of which we know happen here. She says, here the complaint does not allege that Hart attempted to offer securities during the relevant offer periods while in the United States. Accordingly, I find that the SEC has failed to show that Hart made domestic offers of Hart's crypto assets. Part C, pulse chain fraud claims. The SEC asserts its pulse chain fraud claims under Section 10B of the Exchange Act, blah, blah, blah. The parties dispute which test governs these claims. The SEC argues that Congress, through Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act, conducts and effects, test for SEC anti-fraud actions. Hart argues that we talked about Morrison and Binance earlier. Hart argues that Morrison's transactional tests govern because Dodd-Frank's plain language does not rebut the presumption against extraterritoriality. Say that 10 times fast. And also because the Second Circuit explicitly questioned of the impact of Dodd-Frank on Morrison. I need not determine which test should govern because the SEC has failed to state a claim for its pulse chain fraud claims under either inquiry. Under Morrison, the SEC again fails to sufficiently allege that participants in the pulse chain offering became irrevocably bound in the United States. As discussed above, allegations that crypto assets were deposited into digital wallets on the blockchain by an unknown number of U.S. investors is insufficient. To satisfy the conduct and effects test, the SEC must show, 1, conduct within the United States that constitutes significant steps in furtherance of the violation, or 2, conduct occurring outside the United States that has a foreseeable substantial effect within the United States. Here, the SEC fails to allege sufficient facts that place Hart's conduct within the United States. For example, the SEC alleged that Hart discussed the benefits of Pulse Chain, its profit potential, and its development efforts on Pulse Chain's website and YouTube. Notably, the complaint fails to allege that this conduct was directed at the United States. Instead, it merely alleges this conduct originated abroad through online activities. As such, I cannot reasonably infer that Hart's conduct was conducted within the United States. Been saying that all along. The SEC also fails to satisfy the effects test. The complaint alleges that some investors in the U.S. deposited crypto assets during the Pulse Chain offer period. This fails to show the alleged fraud had a substantial effect in the United States. The court has no information regarding the percentage of the defendant's shares that were owned by United States investors, and therefore cannot find that the fraud would have had a substantial effect in the United States or upon U.S. citizens. Let's go down here. For the reasons discussed above, I find the SEC has failed to state a claim for its Pulse Chain fraud claims. Oh, last part, boys and girls. Leave to amend, part 3. The SEC asked that I should grant Hart's motion. I grant the SEC leave to amend the complaint. Okay, so if we lose, can we make up another bullshit piece of paper and put it in your desk? The court should freely give leave to amend when justice so requires. This is a liberal and permissive standard that is consistent with our strong preference for resolving disputes on the merits. If the SEC believes in good faith that it can amend the complaint to remedy the deficiencies identified herein, there's a lot of deficiencies, boys. Any such amended complaint must be filed within 20 days of the date of this order. Conclusion. For the reasons set forth, Hart's motion to dismiss is granted. So order dated February 28th, 2025, Brooklyn, New York, Judge Carol Bagley Amon. Well said, Judge Carol. That was amazing. I mean, look, I don't. So they have 20 days to amend it. I think there's probably a snowball's chance in hell of that even happening. I don't think that they'll attempt to. We've got new Gensler's off, working for another crony somewhere probably by now. I don't think we're going to see that happen. But again, the Nuclear Herbs pointed this out earlier. There is a small chance, they could do that. The door is open because they asked for it to be, and I, would expect that they'd be allowed to do that. But she decimated everything they said. They lost on all counts. I mean, this was like if you guys played Little League Baseball. I did, and we were generally pretty good, but we got 10-run ruled a couple times. Yeah, that's where they stopped the game in like the 4th inning because you're getting your ass kicked. Well, the SEC is that Little League team. So yeah, I'll go through some of you guys' comments here real quick. We got a lot in here. 560 people watching across Twitter and YouTube here. Smash the like. Appreciate you guys. Let's see. Rocket Mob. Wow, indeed. Yes, fresh and fit. What a glorious day it is. What a glorious day. Congrats, everyone. I have to say, I tweeted this earlier too. Nobody, and this bull market's not over, obviously. And obviously, we hope that we go, we're still down. I mean, if you sacrifice for any of this stuff, we're still down 50% on both right now, as of now. But if you have held through all of this, fear, fear, uncertainty, and doubt, kudos to you. I don't want to, sit here and I want to count the chickens before they hatch or whatever the hell the saying is, because, we have a long way to go. Nobody's happy with where their portfolio is yet. But this is a significant day for this to be, again, not the SEC pulling out of the lawsuit, not a partial dismissal, a complete and utter dismissal on all counts. Hashtag Richard Hart was right. And we were right. And, if you panicked on that day when this lawsuit came down or any of the subsequent days until now, I understand. I mean, I had panic. I mean, a lot of people, I never sold. I imagine the majority of you guys watching now didn't either. But I'm sure it was not fun sitting on your hands when you couldn't DCA or whatever. You know, I know how that feeling is. It's like you're living in a silo because everything in crypto seemed like it was popping off and we were the only ones going down, and, you know, Solana 2024 and all this. And we were never right about that because everything but Bitcoin and Solana pretty much had been losing. But it's very isolating when you got this case and then all the other people being sued, and like the Charles Cuckinsons of the world are out there rooting for your demise, but supporting Ripple. I mean, get the fuck out of here. You know, I'm trying not to be, because I know when you get too pumped on yourself and you feel like you're at the mountaintop is right when you should be coming right back down. So I am happy this happened. It's unfortunate that the SEC came after us, but we weren't the only ones. And I think justice has been served very well by Judge Carroll. And that was amazing to read. And I'm really glad she was so well read on the topic and worked so hard. So Side of Spirit, big up, BB. We're going to win. Thanks for being a rock in the community. Yeah, I appreciate you, man. Yeah, I wanted to try to get on here. I know there's probably a lot of places that you guys could be going right now, but thanks for hanging out. Cheers, everyone. Yeah, this is okay. Look at the frantic sell-off. We're going to have volatility right now. No, number one, remember, a shit ton of liquidity just got pulled out of this ecosystem. So we had incentive, inflation quadruple cut or whatever. We had all of the LPs become basically worthless. I mean, there was still an ROI on them, but no sensible person would be participating in them because you'd be getting ridiculous and permanent loss. We have a lot of liquidity right now. So remember, we did just go down pretty hard over the last few days with the rest of the market. We're moving up. You know, we're having a little bit of a pullback now, but this news just came out an hour and a half ago. People are going to do this, and make no mistake about it. I mean, we have whales in this ecosystem still that are probably selling some on this. I mean, we know how it is. We know who they are for the most part, but I would not get discouraged by this. This news just came out. I'd say let's give this like a week or so, and we'll see where we're at here. But don't get upset. This is not a day to be upset. Yeah, this is interesting. So Maddie and Hexologist are cleared too. I mean, there was no lawsuit filed against them. I think they were just subpoenaed. But yeah, I mean, there's nothing that those guys would need to do at this point. I don't want to speak for them, but I can't imagine anything really. What would they be bothered by at this point? And frankly, now I can't speak for them. I was going to say, if it were me, I would just tell the SEC to fuck off, basically leading up to this anyway. But especially Hexo, like mailing your wife and stuff like that. I mean, yeah, don't fuck with my family. Yeah, we can real quick just kind of see what the chart is doing here. I might have to go down to a 1 hour or something to see here. Yeah. Crazy day, everybody. Crazy day indeed. So yeah, this is the pulse chart over the last, there we go. So you can see where the news happened here. Right down here. Right here's about where I bought earlier today, which is very nice. And yeah, it looks like we had a wick. Yeah, that makes sense. I saw that earlier. We were about half off of SAC rate and then sold a little bit back down. But again, look how I'm on the 1 hour chart, man. I mean, yeah, look at the 15. I mean, I don't want to get too degen, but and then you know, for the commenter earlier about the sell-off here, let's go to the daily and zoom out. When in doubt, zoom out. Look how wrecked we still are. Okay. We got a long way to go. This is really, really good. You can see a little itsy bitsy green candle here today, but this is where we are. Right up here is essentially what you could call all-time high. I mean, obviously there was, you know, right back at launch in May of 23, but right here, this would have been what, March probably of last year. Yeah. That's still what, 5x or 5x from here. I can't count right now. But yeah, we're pumping. Now, you want to see something crazy. PulseX flipped Pulse for a period of time earlier. Yes, I know it's not there right now. It's pretty much at parity right now, but PulseX actually flipped and was over Pulse. And I did read. I didn't look at it myself, and I'm definitely not a wallet sleuth or anything. But I think Martin Storyteller on Twitter was saying that it looked like the OA started buying PulseX actually. So here is PulseX versus USD. You can see it wicked up. Yeah, that's higher than what the Pulse price was, about 5.2. Let's go ahead and look at it against Pulse here right now. The strongest chart in all of crypto. This, let's say PDI and this. So here's PulseX against Pulse. Oh my God. You can see we just hit all-time highs. See that? Over 1.035. So PulseX officially flipped Pulse for a period of time. And that's another reason why, I mean, Ewok and I both were in those PulseX farms for a while there. But when this, when the ink inflation and the rewards got slashed, you had to pull out. I mean, that would be massive. Maybe not massive, but I mean, you're getting impermanent loss, because that ratio, look at what it just shot up. Like it was at 0.82. Is that still today or yesterday? And it went over parity. So, and that was just a little pump. I mean, when this stuff continues, man, I mean, I don't know. Is the plan for PulseX to just kind of be a parity with Pulse, or is it going to blow it out of the water? I mean, I will say I have been primarily, I've been DCAing into everything, but PulseX was what I was primarily DCAing into for the better part of the last year. I know Frank Molina, awesome dude who's been on our channel many, many times, says he's like 99% PulseX. So, yeah. How about some memes? Are the memes blasting off? We got most wanted here, which I finally just bought a little of earlier today at about 7.5 cents. It's had a little bit of a movement here. I think its all-time highs around 17 cents or 21 cents. Yeah, we're going to have things popping off. I mean, yeah, exactly. Side of Spirit used to be 4-1. Yeah. The PulseX to Pulse ratio at launch. My God, the money that could have been made. But yeah, just DCAing hard into that's a crazy thing too. Like if you were, this is why I think it's so wise to like some people are like, oh, based on the ratio right now, should I just be buying this or whatever? And that's why I think it's valuable to just be like, look, you don't know everything. I don't know everything. Let's just buy everything equally. And I'll tell you, if I wasn't buying PulseX as much as everything else over the last year, my portfolio would have been a lot more wrecked today, leading into this. So, yeah, I'm with you and Frank, mostly PulseX. I mean, I would be careful on that too. I mean, I can't, obviously the chart went up the way that it did, so there's not much that you can really do to combat that. But I've been DCAing into everything equally here now, basically. We can look at Ink real quick. It's had a really hard move up today, of course. Let's see here. I mean, there's really no point looking at the daily, I guess, for what we're trying to see. Yep. So it's up to what, over it was over $3, $2.81 right now. It got up to $3.62. Yeah. And if you zoom out on Ink all time, is it going to look like a dump token a little bit? Yeah, a little bit. Not quite Zen, and it's not going to be Zen, but, we just had massive inflation. And this is the stuff that you kind of just have to know beyond the chart, is like the inflation being cut and things like that. There's obviously a plan for this ecosystem with big-time yield farms to come along where you're going to want Ink. I mean, there's a reason it's incentive, and it's going to be much higher in price, obviously. Let's check out Hex. Let's see where Hex is. So here's its pump. And whoa, look at that. So right before the new, I remember looking at this right before. Like I saw the Court Listener doc got uploaded. We were at 0097, and it wicked the whole way up to 1.5 cents. Holy shit. I'll be damned. And right now we're practically still there, 1.3 cents. So I think Hex is going to use that 1 cent mark as nice support here now. I know there were some people talking about Goblin Town on Twitter the other day. I don't think we're going to any kind of Goblin Town, but we'll see if Vitalik decides to get up from the cuck chair here. But yeah, things are looking good there. Everybody's favorite redheaded stepchild here. We could look at EHEX. I like to look at the, as much of the chart as we can get here. Woo! Look at that. So we were at about 0024, and EHEX wicked up to, wow. 0024, yeah. Yeah, most of these did like a 60% move, 75% move, and it's a 0036 right now. That is a green candle, all right. Yeah. Well, insane. That's where we're at. Yeah, EHEX 45%. Yeah. Well, yeah, phenomenal day. If you guys have anything else, put it in the chat. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to go over. I really wanted to come in, see how everybody was doing, go over that document. I think Nuclear Herbs either already is or is going to be on with Crypto Cabana tonight, which I am definitely going to tune into. But yeah, we'll see what the fallout of this is. Let's see, Toby, just tuned in. Have you discussed how this is actually quite different from the other SEC cases that got dismissed? Well, yes, and there's like levels to that question because I'm not sure which ones you're referring to, but nothing else has gotten dismissed. This got dismissed. Okay. So I'm not sure if you mean like other ones in history prior to all the action we had this week. But what happened this week is the new SEC that has rid of the guzzler proactively dropped cases. Judges did not come out, shit all over the SEC, and dismiss the cases. Yeah, no, I am just talking crypto related, Toby. No, what I'm saying, if you do mean the crypto, I'm saying the crypto related ones from this week, they were all this new regime within the SEC who, is doing more of a light touch on crypto. That was them pulling out. Okay. This is Judge Carroll not allowing the SEC to pull out and say, no, you are wrong. Richard Hart is entirely vindicated of all of this stuff. You are wrong on every count, whether it be the jurisdiction, the offering period, whether or not there's securities, literally everything. Like I said, I mean, it's a 10 out of 10 result. It's better than I think all of us really thought was going to happen. And I know there are people like on Twitter, like cheerleaders and stuff, that are just like, Richard Hart will be vindicated. We are going to see a dismissal. I mean, nobody really knows that. And if you're thinking of it with like logical thought, there was a percentage of it happening. I would have probably put the percentage of that happening at maybe 30%. Like I said, I thought maybe a partial dismissal and move on. At this point, I would have thought more likelihood that the SEC dropped it themselves as this new leadership comes in. But hey, it's not every day you get a 10 out of 10 result, and that's what we got here. So exactly, Toby. Yes. Yeah, the other ones were dropped. This is the original judge actually ruling regardless of politics in case anyone tries to use that brush. Yeah. Yeah, this is the judge. This has nothing to do... I honestly, I don't know the woman, obviously, but I have the utmost respect for Judge Carroll because, again, she was highly educated on this coming in. You could tell whether you actually attended the court date, the motion to dismiss hearing on October 31st, or just read the transcript or watched the AI replay, role-playing stuff. She killed it. She was totally prepared for all of this, knew exactly what she was talking about. Had all this prior case law. She just wrote a 30-page, very thoughtful response. Took her 4 months, which wasn't the best, but I'm very, very happy with this, obviously. Best case scenario we got indeed. Yeah. And when will RH stream? I guess we will see. He's tweeted a couple times, nothing totally earth-shattering other than just announcing that it happened. I've been seeing a, I don't know if it was fake or not. I imagine it's fake. A tweet of Charles Hoskinson apologizing to Richard Hart. I don't know if that was some doctored thing or not. I saw a couple people tweeting it. Maybe you guys can tell me if, yeah, here's one from Sami. Well, let me be the first. Why don't I just go to, Jesus Christ, go to Hoskinson's profile. I mean, this guy weirdly picking fights, of course, with the pulse chain. Yeah, he literally did. Holy shit. I'll be damned. Let's see if I can pull it up for you guys. Not that we need Charles Hoskinson's okay on any of this. But wow. Yeah, apologies for the Jesus Christ. Okay. The white Twitter here. I open it up in a different browser. Well, let me be the first to apologize to Richard. This guy, I feel like, can't get out of his own way. And honestly, I feel like he's probably only doing this because it's some attention for him, because there's just not much happening with Cardano. But I don't really think there's an amount of apology. I mean, Charles obviously feels a certain way about Richard. And honestly, a lot of the shit that he talked about had nothing to do. What Charles talked about in regards to Richard had nothing to do with the SEC case. He was talking about the Interpol thing and totally misrepresenting it and everything. So I'm not too interested in your apology. I'm not doing this right now. So yeah, that's real. He apologized to Richard. So very interesting. Very interesting indeed. Yeah, I mean, props to Charles. He has gone out of his way, though, to go so hard against Richard unneedfully and double down time after time. That, I mean, it's cool that he apologized, but I don't really take anything he does seriously because his emotions are like this. You know, I don't know what the guy's intentions are, but it really doesn't matter. It's the least important thing on this day, really. So, will RH be jacked when he live streams? I don't know, man. I'd rather he have just gone on a diet. You know, if he got his body fat down a little bit, I don't care if he's jacked, but if he lost 30 to 50 pounds, cool. Shredded, maybe. All right. Well, guys, this has been amazing. Ewok is still out of town for our showtime this coming Wednesday, so we'll see what we do. I just really felt like it was important, and I wanted to talk to you guys, be part of this day in the history of this ecosystem. You know, and it's cool. I think for me, I'll just say this, and I'm sure some of you as well. Like some of us that weren't OG Hexicans that got to live that glory back in the day and live through like some of these big moments. It feels really good to be here for this. Like, if you weren't there at the beginning, you were here for this, you know, and this, I wasn't there for the beginning, but this feels like beginning type stuff, you know, just a very, very significant day. And I don't think we should underrate it, not just for this ecosystem, but for cryptocurrency as a whole. And I'm just really fucking proud and happy. And there's still a lot of work to be done. And we'll be here on this channel representing this ecosystem through, I mean, not just the rest of the bull market, but for as long as we can, you know, and are able to do it. So, yeah, shout out you guys. Acid Thunder, Digital Money, Marcus, Toby S., Mr. Shazam, checks my pulse in here. Degen Moonboy, of course, Side of Spirit, a lot of you guys, returning viewers, tons of people on Twitter. So I appreciate all of you guys. We will be back on this channel again soon. Yes, Ewok is aware of the information. I texted him right away. He was a little delayed on his response, but what are you going to do? But yeah, I appreciate you guys being here. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, support Real DeFi. Hopefully we will be seeing Richard Hart very soon. Until then, enjoy the pump. This has been Broke Boy Crypto. Catch you guys soon. It's been the creed of crypto.